Good morning.
Good morning. This is David Granite. Why?
Hi, Senator. This is Peter. I think
Hey, Peter.
We will get started. So hello, everyone. My name is Peter Clark. I am a special assistant for project and policy in Senator Shaheen's office here in New Hampshire. I want to thank everyone who joined us today on the call. I know there is a large number of us on the call today, some listening in, some will be speaking. So just a reminder to please keep your lines muted if not speaking so that we can reduce background noise. I don't hear too much right now, so that is great. But just throughout the call, just so that we don't have any interruptions with the call. Before we get started, I want to do a roll call of our speakers today to make sure that everyone is here and on the line. So I will just go down our list. Do we have Scott Brody from the American Camps Association?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Scott. Do we have Representative Erica Connors from Melody Pines Day Camp?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Representative. Do we have Ken Robbins from New Hampshire Camp?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ken. Do we have Andy Bohannon from the New Hampshire Recreation and Parks Association?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Andy. Do we have Chris Emmons from the New Hampshire Boys and Girls Club?
Yes, I'm here.
Thanks, Chris. David Porce from the Granite YMCA?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Do we have Sharon McCarthy from Girls Inc.?
Yes, good morning. I'm present.
Good morning. We have John Susi from Easter Seals.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Jim Chase from the Seacoast Science Center.
Yes, Peter, I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, Jim. We have Bruce McCall from the Courier Museum.
Yes, I'm here, Peter. Thank you so much.
Hi, Bruce. We have Norm Boussalet from the National Boys and Girls Club, Camp Mariposa. Okay, we'll give Norm a minute. And do we have Larry Barker from the Berry Conservation Camp?
Greetings. Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Larry. So as you can see, we have a number of speakers today. So we just ask that for those speakers to keep your remarks as limited as possible so that we can make sure to get through all our speakers and give everyone a chance to speak today. I'd also like to acknowledge that we do have some press on the line. We have Josie Grove from the Union Leader, Alexandra McGowan from NHPR, Mike Mortensen from the Laconia Sun, and Adam Urquhart from the Nashua Telegraph. So with that, I will turn it over to Senator Shaheen for opening remarks.
Well, thanks very much, Peter, and thank you all so much for joining me on this call today. I want to just recognize my staff who are on the call. In addition to Peter, we have Madison Lightfoot, who I think many of you know, Chuck Henderson, who, of course, anybody who's in the North Country knows. Errol Marshall is my legislative director down in D.C. Erica Anholt works on education and child care issues, and Robert Henson, who works mostly on business and economic issues. So obviously the portfolio that each of my staff has overlaps so much of the work that all of you do, because many of you do things other than just provide camps. You're providing child care for the needs of people who are at work. You're taking care of kids in so many ways and providing other services for kids. And so I really appreciate your being on the call today. I'm going to try and limit my remarks because I really want to hear from you. But I wanted to fill you in on a couple of things. First of all, I know that some of you have been able to get the PPP loans through the CARES Act. And for many of you, that has not, while it's helped, it has not solved the problem, obviously, because some of those loans are running out at this point. And also for all of you who are seasonal, I appreciate that the way the guidance came down from Treasury really didn't address the challenges that you have as seasonal businesses. Some of you may know that my husband and I started out our married life with a seasonal business on the coast of Maine. And one of the things I very clearly appreciate is that if you don't make your money in the time you have the season to do that, then you're in big trouble getting through the rest of the year. And I know that that's one of the challenges that so many of our camps have, and that we have a combination of overnight camps, day camps, public and private representatives on the line. So I understand that some of your challenges are going to be different than others on this call, and we're looking at how we can be as helpful as possible to everyone. One of the things that I've spoken with some of you about is the idea of trying to include camps, whether day camps or overnight camps, in legislation that has been introduced by Senator Murray that I'm co-sponsoring, as is Senator Hassan, to provide $50 billion for child care. Now, we don't always think about camps, either overnight or day camps, as being child care, but as a mother who's had kids in both day camps and overnight camps, I know very clearly that it helps with child care. And for so many families, that's what they depend on in the summer when their kids are out of school, is being able to get them into camps, not only to make sure their kids are taken care of, but that they have a learning experience which supplements the other learning that they have in school. So one of my thoughts in trying to include camps as part of the child care package is that we need to get to a critical mass as we think about how do we get something done in the next package of legislation to respond to the coronavirus. One of the challenges that we have right now is getting a commitment from the leadership in the Senate and from the administration that they will take up another package of legislation. As some of you may know, the House sent over a package called the HEROES Act over a month ago now that still has not been taken up in the Senate, and we don't yet have a commitment from Majority Leader McConnell to do that. Most of my colleagues, both Democrat and Republican, that I've talked to believe that we've got to provide additional help to people, whether it's businesses like yours, camps, child care centers, or families who still are unemployed and in need of help. So I'm hopeful that as the administration and the Senate continue to hear from people who really need help, who are in trouble, that we can put enough pressure on the majority leader to actually take up this legislation and get something done. So I'm going to stop with that, but again, urge everyone to mute your phone. I hear somebody, sounds like paper or leaves rattling in the background, so if you could just check, make sure your phone is muted. I appreciate that that's a challenge, because every week when we're on the Democratic caucus call, we always have people who forget to mute their phone. So I know it's we have to think about it and really look and make sure we've done it. So thank you very much for doing that. And Peter, I don't know who you want to call on first, if you've got somebody who you've queued up to do that. I understood that Representative Connors had to leave early on the call, so do we want to ask her to begin?
Yes, Senator. We'll start with Representative Connors.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senator Shaheen. My name is Erica Connors. I'm a New Hampshire State Representative. I serve on Children and Family Law, and I am also the owner and director of Melody Pines Day Camp. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. We know this is an extremely challenging time to be a legislator, and appreciate all you're doing to help the people of New Hampshire. In the state of New Hampshire, we have a shortage of good, safe, affordable child care for school-age children. This is not something new to life during the COVID-19 pandemic, but the problem has been exacerbated by it. During the summer months, New Hampshire summer day camps and overnight camps serve New Hampshire's working families by providing care for thousands of children. Now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, camps across New Hampshire have closed for the summer of 2020, and the future of camps across the state of New Hampshire is uncertain. Preparing to open camp is not as easy as unlocking the doors and flipping on the lights. The opening of camp takes months of preparation, and necessary spending begins well before the start of camp. Because New Hampshire's guidelines for reopening both day camps and overnight camps were slow in coming, many camps had to make the difficult decision not to open prior to the release of the guidelines. They could not continue to prepare and spend, not knowing if they would be able to open and operate. In addition, the guidelines that were ultimately released, although designed to protect against the spread of COVID-19, put in place other restrictions that many felt would put both campers and staff in danger for things such as heat-related illness and drowning. As a result, an even greater number of camps came to the conclusion that we could not safely open under those guidelines. This summer, thousands of New Hampshire children have been left without camp and without care, but the problem does not end in 2020. Summer camps have fixed expenses, including insurance, maintenance, and property taxes that do not go away just because children are not able to attend. The federal government has given the state of New Hampshire funding to support its citizens and its businesses, but summer camps have been left behind. Just this year, New Hampshire camps were taken over by the Department of Health and Human Services. As such, we have been labeled as childcare. As noted on the main page for the Main Street Relief Program, child care program, and therefore camps were not eligible to apply for the program. An additional relief program was established for child care. However, in order to be eligible for those funds, programs must open by September 8th, 2020. Youth summer camps are a unique industry. Unlike many other businesses, we are seasonal. We cannot make up for our summer financial losses in the fall, winter, and spring. Instead of a loss of 3 months of income due to COVID-19, we are looking at an entire year without income. This is not sustainable. The fact of the matter is, without relief, camps will close. Without relief, camps who are able to survive the year will need to increase tuition significantly in order to make up for losses in 2020. We understand that legislation has been sponsored at the federal level to help support child care businesses. However, that legislation uses a look-back period of 6 months prior to COVID-19. Camps were not open during those months and would therefore have no losses to report. In order to survive, New Hampshire camps need assistance. If camps do not survive, we will not only lose a legacy, we will lose good, safe, and affordable child care for thousands of New Hampshire school-age children and working families. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And you point out the catch-22 that camps are in, which has got to be addressed in any package of federal legislation that happens next.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Representative. We will now move to Scott Brody from the American Camp Association.
Good morning, Senator. Thanks for taking the time to meet with all of us. And thank you for your support of our field. You've been a supporter for many, many years, and we certainly know you're thinking of us, particularly as we're moving forward. The impact across the country on camps has been tremendous, really sort of an unimaginable level. So camps are about a $21 billion sector nationally. And the American Camp Association has surveyed our membership and really studied this. And at this point, over $16 billion has been lost nationally by the sector. And this is reflected by the fact that nationwide, over 75% of overnight camps are not operating. And frankly, those that are operating, particularly in states that have escalating infection rates, are at risk of closure. So this number is only going to get worse, quite likely. And while a greater percentage of day camps are operating, as was described, in order to operate in this environment, if it's even possible, if a state allows it, camps have had to delay their starts, significantly reduce their capacity. And again, this is a summer where virtually every camp in the country that does operate is losing money. And we are a really unique field for the camps that can't operate, and that includes most of the camps in New Hampshire, the vast majority. We are, not only are we returning any deposits that were given us by families, so effectively losing income all the way back to September, but it's likely we're not going to get additional income until next spring at the earliest. So unlike any other sector, we're going to effectively lose 22 months of revenue as a field because we can't operate this summer, or we can operate and we're operating at significantly diminished revenue numbers. So this is a really dire situation across the country. And we're profoundly grateful for your advocacy for our sector, both on Senator Murray's $50 billion child care package, on your advocacy to fix this odd glitch in PPP, where camps were finally given a more favorable seasonality definition toward the end of April, but banks were not able to amend loans if they had filed their Form 1502, and it turns out 90% of camps ended up getting shut out and not able to access that additional PPP funding for the PPP running through June 30th. So we know that your team is aware of this and you're advocating with the SBA and with Treasury to try to fix that glitch and allow camps to amend their original PPP loans. And we're also profoundly grateful that you are co-sponsoring legislation to create a second PPP opportunity, which could cover an additional period of time. For our sector, that is incredibly vital. As would be, frankly, access to the disaster relief loans through the SBA, but not at the current de facto $150K limit, which is what's happening right now if you apply for those disaster relief loans, but rather at the $2 million limit that was originally intended for those loans. So we're really looking for all of the help we can get. You'll hear more about the work we're doing within the state with the Gopher Committee, but this is a survival level dire situation, the likes of which we have not faced in the last 150 years, and we truly appreciate your support and your partnership.
Well, thanks, Scott. Thank you for your kind words. Can I just ask you? I know in terms of you quantified the dollar sector of the contribution that camps make. Do you have any sense of employment and what the numbers are in employment? I know particularly for a lot of students that provides summer employment for students. Are there any numbers that exist either nationally or in New Hampshire? I don't know, Ken, maybe you can address that as part of your comments, but if we have those numbers, I think that would be helpful as we're making the case for why this is so critical to provide support.
Yes, Ken can certainly address the New Hampshire numbers, and I'll tell you that nationally, camps employ about 3 million Americans, and in our, frankly, gathering the data to assess the damage has been challenging. We know that over 1 million jobs are already lost to closure. My guess is it's going to be closer to in that $2 to $3 million number by the time we're done. And
thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much, Scott. And now we will move to Ken from the New Hampshire camps, Ken Robbins.
Thank you so much. And Senator Shaheen, thank you so much for taking time this morning to talk with us. And Scott, I appreciate you covering a lot of this economic data. I'll try and pare down what I share a little bit, which makes my job easier. I am serving as president right now of the New Hampshire Camp Directors Association. We represent 160 licensed youth recreation camps here in the state. And I'm also director of Camp Kabian, an overnight camp for boys in Alton Bay, which, like over 95% of all of the resident camps in the state, is closed for this summer. And altogether here in the state, I think fewer than a quarter of all of the licensed camps will operate in some form this summer, about half of the day camps, but that 5% of overnight camps, that means just about 6 camps will open this summer. And those camps have this enormous challenge ahead of them. Like Representative Conator said, the state guidelines that came down just a few weeks ago, they are extraordinarily difficult to meet. They're certainly appropriate given the real threat that we're facing, but what needs to be done is it's all but incompatible with how camps operate. I was thinking about this, and as simple as I can strip it down to is that camps are designed to bring people together, forge bonds, build relationships, strengthen communities, and these guidelines are explicitly and rightly, but explicitly designed to keep people as far apart and separate of one another as possible for safety. The losses go beyond the economics, certainly. We estimate that licensed youth recreation camps serve about 150,000 campers every year. That's just the 160 youth recreation camps. Nearly half of those children are from right here in the state. We calculate about 1 in 3 camp-age children in New Hampshire, ages 5 and older, go to a New Hampshire camp. And over 37,000 New Hampshire families send their children to a New Hampshire camp. So at best, that means that if 3/4 of the camps in the state aren't open this summer, then almost 20,000 New Hampshire kids who should be at camp this summer in New Hampshire, they won't be. And they're losing the social and emotional development that camps teach. They're missing the lessons in environmental education and stewardship, citizenship, self-reliance, independence, and character that camps provide. And at a time when children need to be making and remaking connections with peers and mentors, camps are more essential than they've ever been, and they can't be there. And as Scott said, the critical question in our minds is, will they be there next year? When they're needed, I would say that much more. When we surveyed all of the licensed camps in the state a couple of weeks ago, 17% of those who responded that they were either likely or somewhat likely to be unable to reopen next summer without significant help. If that percentage holds true, extended to all 160 licensed camps, that means next year we might be looking at as many as 25 of our camps that are gone and possibly forever. And I'll just say, I shared this with your office anecdotally. When I was a camper here at Cavian, there were 6 camps in Alton Bay, and now there are 3. And where those 3 large, old overnight camps were, it's just houses. It's this tremendous loss. And I think about the boys and the girls who grew up thinking of those places like I think of this place where we're cared for and loved and where we can learn and grow and realize our full potential. They are still mourning that loss. I know that they are. And we're very fearful at this point that this lost summer could lead to that sort of tragedy repeated. So whether camps are open or closed this summer, getting to next year intact is just uncertain. We estimated that across the board, open or closed, licensed camps are facing about $146 million loss in revenue this year. And for those of us who are closed, like Scott said, every dollar that we've collected for this summer has been returned to families who now need to find some alternative for their children. And right now, most of us simply don't know how we'll plug the hole in our budgets that this summer is going to leave. We won't be able to recover along with the rest of the state's other industries as the economy starts to reopen. Like Representative Conator says, we don't have camp in the fall, winter, or spring. Next summer is a long, long way away. We need help to survive. So it's compelling to cite $113 million that camps directly contribute to the New Hampshire economy every year. You asked about employment figures. As of the last study that was done a few years ago, we estimate about 300 full-time jobs here in New Hampshire in the camp industry, but 5,500 seasonal employees and part-time employees. That works out to about $32 million in wages. Some of those will sustain as people like myself work to recover and get situated to try and reopen next year, but a lot of those jobs are gone for this year, and if some significant number of camps that don't reopen, those jobs are lost forever, certainly. I'll say that what's so heartbreaking and terrifying to anyone who's gone to camp, worked at camp, sent their children to camp is the potential loss of that place where we felt that sense of belonging, could explore and develop, become the best possible versions of ourselves. There is no place that provides that like a camp, and we have to act now to ensure that we still have that when this crisis is passed. So I thank you so much, Senator Shaheen, and everyone in your office who's taken the time to listen, who've advocated on behalf of camps, and to hear today about what's going on this summer. It's a real privilege to have some time with you this morning.
Well, thanks very much, Ken. And we have your testimony before the Gopher Legislative Advisory Committee, so we've got those stats. And I just want to identify with your comments about the cultural impact of camps. I can't tell you how many people I have run into across the country who talk about their remembrances of going to camp in New Hampshire and how that was one of the best parts of their childhood. So, to think about losing that is just heartbreaking. So we've got to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, Ken. We will now move to Andy Bohannon from the Recreation and Parks Association.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity, Senator Shaheen. Appreciate it.
Morning, Andy.
As you know, the New Hampshire Parks and Rec Association is made up of municipalities throughout the state and a few nonprofits. But we during this whole experience, we're a little bit different than some of the programs that you've recently heard from. But we've been pushing information out to our members all through this COVID experience about what to do, how to do it, and transform your programs if you were going to run this summer. And we then collaborated with the UNH Recreation Management and Policy, Community Planning and Research Collaborative to conduct a study of our members so we could gain a little bit more insight of what each municipality is doing for summer. And we had 61% response rate from the 97 participating municipalities, which was pretty good for us. And we looked at we wanted to understand the scope of the current programming during COVID, so what they were doing at that time, COVID's impact of summer camp was what we're talking about today, and the impact on departments in general. And it was fairly alarming, some of the results. And New Hampshire Parks and Rec Association, during the summertime, we impact over 13,000 children across the state, which is a pretty good number for municipalities. Members who are doing camp have seen a significant drop in revenue. I know here in Keene, we registered before this whole experience happened, and we had 150 kids registered for our program. We're down to 85. That's a third of our revenue for our operating budget for the entire fiscal year. So it's having an impact on the larger municipality for a lot of camps, and a lot of programs have seen the numbers just drop. Exeter, for example, they dropped through a program of just drop-in only, and other programs have just dropped significantly. So their revenues are just, continuing to not be where they are, and that impacts a lot of them because they're not based out of their operation budget like the city of Keene is. They may be a revolving fund, and that revolving fund gets them through the year, like some of the other camps that I talked about. And we did find that 88% of our members were going to be offering some type of summer programming. What that was going to look like was kind of still up in the air at the time of the survey, only because a lot of towns had not voted yet on whether or not to hold them. And we did have several programs just as of beginning of June cancel all their summer programs. And that's recreation departments being canceled, which was very, very unfortunate. This includes camps, their pools, their waterfronts, their specialty camps, and that impacted Parks and Rec across the state. We average about 25 seasonal employees, and so that's 25 students of the age of 16 to 25 not being employed for the summer, not being able to, gain money for college and that sort of thing, and that's a big impact. And we feel that we are an essential local government service, and for a lot of towns, we're doing that, and other towns we're not, and it's having a big impact on everybody. But I know there's a lot of people on the call, so I'll be respectful of everybody's time, but thank you very much for your support in all of the ways, whether it be LWCF or where we're able to build parks to hold our programs, but just in these various CARES Act and that sort of thing. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
Well, thanks, Andy. And one of the things that we're going to be fighting for, if we can get a next round of assistance, is more help for state and local governments, because we know that you all are on the front lines and that your budgets are being impacted. So I think that will be a big point of negotiation in the upcoming package of legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I will now move to Chris Emmon from the New Hampshire Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for your time. Along with funding, and I know that there are a couple of packages that are currently being looked at. The big issue, there's a couple of issues for us, and I know one of them is probably fairly sensitive, but the unemployment $600 on a weekly basis, it has caused some challenges in finding staff. And I know that there were some efforts to potentially extend that, and I understand the intent there. But I just want to encourage perhaps a little bit more thought in how that would happen, and what the qualifications would be, or if there could be some kind of hybrid there, because we certainly want to help people that are certainly in need. But on the other hand, we need to make sure that employers can recruit back and recruit, period, staff to work for, whether it's child care centers or summer day camps, or even the overnight camps are probably staffed at this point. So I just wanted to bring that topic up. And as far as the Boys and Girls Club, since of course we do run summer day camp programs, which many of us are in the process of doing now, the other thing that we look forward to is the fall with school. And needless to say, here in New Hampshire, there haven't been guidelines set forth yet. We anticipate those probably within the next couple of weeks. But there's going to be potentially a myriad of challenges for us, since each school district is going to be able to set their own path, rightfully so. But for the 7 Boys and Girls Clubs in New Hampshire, and I know the YMCAs also have several programs in schools, that's going to set up some particular challenge, particularly if they go with a hybrid mix where some kids are in school one day and then they're in school the next. So if there are opportunities for funding, that might be an area that we're going to have to focus on, particularly if some of the kids are with us all day. There is going to be a need for us, as well as out-of-school programs, to be able to make sure that we have staff that can help the kids with the distance learning. And if they go all distance learning, that's definitely going to be the case. We certainly currently employ staff that have some of those qualifications, but I would anticipate there being a greater need for those kind of, and retaining and attracting those qualified staff to get them in. Because as parents keep telling us, with the distance learning, many of them are probably going to have to go back to work or back to the office in September, seems to be the timeline I keep hearing. And many of them, it's just not their forte of being able to help their kids. I can relate as well with having a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old. Truly being able to be of assistance with their homework is pretty challenging. And if we're going to have them all day, I think the Boys and Girls Clubs and any of the after-school or out-of-school programs can play just a major role in being able to assist the schools and make sure that the kids, particularly the ones that are challenged by distance learning, to be able to make sure that they're staying on top of things and will not fall behind. So that's it. I just wanted to leave you kind of with those 2 points, and I do appreciate your time and helping us through these challenges.
Well, thanks very much, Chris. And on the $600 additional UI benefit, as you know, that runs out at the end of July. And I've heard from a number of sectors who are very concerned, not that additional benefit has been available, because everybody appreciates why it's helpful to so many people who need help right now, but concerned that we got to figure out something for another round, because we need to get people back to work, and that's been an impediment in a number of sectors. So I do appreciate that and have shared that concern with folks here.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Chris. We'll now move to David from the Granite YMCA.
Well, thank you, Senator Shaheen, Peter, and all the staff for giving us the opportunity today to share our experiences. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Collectively, our 9 YMCAs are one of the largest providers of camping and childcare in the state of New Hampshire. In camp alone, we serve over 15,000 youth each summer in 6 overnight camps and 16 day camp locations throughout the state. And COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on the YMCA camps. All 6 of our overnight camps have been forced to close, and our day camps are projected to run with increased costs due to COVID protocols at about 45% of the previous year's enrollment. We anticipate a collective total loss of income of $14.5 million. For 4 of our overnight camps, who operate as independent 501c3s, summer camp revenue, as has been stated earlier, is their only source of income, and they've had to spend millions of dollars in advance of the summer to purchase supplies, prepare camp, hire staff, which they may not be able to recover due to the loss of income. Federal support through the CARES Act is certainly helpful for qualified Ys, but it's not nearly enough. We need additional funding in the form of loans that can be 100% forgiven to ensure that we can provide this critical care this summer and for many summers ahead. And if I could, I'd like to share a little bit of the Granite YMCA's story. Camping currently represents 30% of our overall revenue. We hire each summer about 460 summer camp staff, and we've had to close both of our overnight camps, and we're also running at 45% enrollment in our day camps. That's 3,200 campers less than last year at a loss of $3.8 million in revenue, which is critical to our cash flow and our long-term sustainability. And because we have more than 500 employees, we don't qualify for the PPP loan, and only recently was the EIDL expanded to include larger not-for-profits, though use of this loan creates a long-term burden on our organization. As good fiscal stewards, we've sadly furloughed 450 staff, and we've applied for CARES Act funding through the state of New Hampshire, a competitive process that we hope will have an award. However, without that funding, I think we would be forced to use reserves, a line of credit, take out other loans, and these options severely reduce our ability to respond to critical community needs, and it makes us a less effective nonprofit community service agency. So, Senator, you have been an amazing advocate for nonprofits, and we encourage you to continue to advocate for us to help provide federal funding to our Y camps and day camps to stabilize operations and ensure our survival. From all of us at the Y, we really thank you for being our advocate and champion in the Senate. We appreciate you, and we're here to help in any way we can. Thanks for the time. I really do appreciate that.
Well, thanks very much, David, and we will continue to fight to do everything we can to get you help.
Thank you, David. I do want to point out that we have about 20 minutes left, so we still have a number of speakers, so please try to limit remarks. And now we will move to Sharon from Girls Inc.
Hi, good morning, and thank you so much for having me and Girls Inc. being part of this conversation this morning. I will be brief, and my comments are a bit more micro than some of the ones that we've already heard, and I'm also only 6 months into this field professionally, so I've learned a lot already about what I've just heard. Here at Girls Inc., we have the 2 centers in Nashua and Manchester, and summer camp is a very vital component of what we do, in addition to the after-school programs and the in-school outreach programs. So we opened on Monday, and we're just delighted to open on Monday. We had girls signed up from the moment we opened our enrollment. We have waiting lists at both centers, and we are at half capacity because of the protocols in place and the restrictions in place. So we have about 40 or 45 girls at each center. And, the cost to operate the centers are the same, whether it's half or full. So it is taxing. The fees, both the parent fees and the assistance that we've been getting has been down for the camp programs, but I must say the funding opportunities on the bright side that have been available have been incredibly helpful. The PPP happening has basically, allowed us to open our doors for summer camp, but that will be running out the first week in July. So the girls we serve are 80% of them are single parents, grandparents, or in foster care, so they need to be working, and they were just so eager to have their girls with us, as we're eager to take care of them and have them back. But especially the middle schoolers, I have to say, that age group of 13 to 15, they kind of fall between the cracks. They're kind of old enough to stay home by themselves, but having them back in our camps feels really good, because that seems to be an age bracket that's really at risk. So we are operating our day camp from 8 to 5 in both centers. It's a little challenging without the pools being open this summer, but we're coming up with a lot of activities for them. We have also had some of our staff drop off for a variety of reasons. One of them, of course, the unemployment being advantageous, and secondly, people having some issues with returning to work for their own personal safety. So it will be challenging for us come September because not being sure what the schools are doing, not being sure if we're going to be open all day or half the day. That's frankly where I'm most concerned about our financial well-being. What will that look like, and how will we be able to pull that off? And so the idea of future funding is very appealing. Obviously, we're doing everything we can to raise funds from donors, but it's an extremely challenging time, and my concern is more, 6 months to a year out. What will that look like because of all the unknowns right now? And but we are, thrilled to have the girls back. I just know that the population we serve, we'd have a full house in a second if we could expand what we're doing, and I think it would be really important to serve more girls, but we're doing what we can right now, and feel grateful for the funding that's become available. So thank you for your efforts in making that available. But the future will be very challenging.
Well, thanks, Sharon. You're right. It's a very uncertain future, but thank you. I've had a chance to visit Girls Inc. In your locations, and I know what a great job you do.
Thank you. Enjoy it.
Thank you, Sharon. We'll move to John Stussy from Easterfield.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen, for having us on this call. And I also want to thank all the people that spoke before me. Very powerful things you spoke of. Camp Snowmo is a little different than most of the programs on the phone, I believe. We run a program for children with disabilities, many with complex medical needs. We just do 1 week sessions for kids, so we don't we probably don't impact the child care quite as much as other programs, but it's certainly been, I think, a relief for parents to be able to catch up for that week that their children are at camp. I can repeat a lot of the things that people have already said. However, I think I'll go a little different route. Camp Snowmo is an Easter Seals program, but we're very generously supported by the New Hampshire Snowmobile Association. We're reaching the 50-year mark for that relationship, and all year long, the Snowmobile Association does events that raise funding that they then donate to Camp Snowmo. So we're worried about the ability for those clubs to be able to do events in this new environment that we're living in. Again, they're incredibly committed, and they haven't indicated that they won't be doing that, but I'm assuming a lot of people on the line do a lot of fundraising for their programs, and that's been very difficult to have really any kind of event. So, just to echo the things people said about camp, aside from the financial piece, the impact on kids in their social development that camp provides and their relationships with each other. We see such tremendous growth with campers that we have come back year after year, and we work with a lot of international staff also that haven't been able to come into this great country of ours, and they come just for short times, but the ability for international staff to be able to teach students, United States students, and teach them different cultures has been a loss through this also. So, again, thank you for letting me speak.
Well, thanks, John. And I fear that the President's executive order will have on visas will have an even greater impact on the ability to get folks here from outside the country. I just wanted to speak. You raised the issue of groups, charitable contributions, and the groups that the Snowmobile Association and their help for Camp Snowmo. One of the things that we're working on, and I'm hopeful that we may get this, if we have another package that we can get this in, is an expanded charitable deduction that has bipartisan support, and it would allow up to deductions of up to $4,000 per individual before they do their tax returns. So we're hoping that that will have an impact on increased charitable contributions as well.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We'll now move to Jim Chase from the Seacoast Science Center.
Good morning, and thank you, Senator, and thank you for inviting us to the conversation today. I've learned so much already. Our perspective is that of a much smaller organization. Isn't it wonderful? It's been very difficult times, though, and I think the story of the Science Center is a bit of a qualified success story under these circumstances. We run a environmental day camp throughout the summer and through all school holiday seasons. We're able to open this summer because I think we're very fortunate resource-wise, and we made a business decision very early on in the process. We closed to the public. The museum closed to the public in mid-March, and we began scrambling to think what was next. And two things developed for us at that point. One was closed to the public. We lost all of our admissions revenue. And the other thing that instead of normally entertaining 25,000 school kids in our field trip spring season, we saw exactly zero. And while those are financial hardships and really create an existential crisis for the organization, we were able to redeploy some of our resources to figuring out a way to get our camps online. Very early on, New Hampshire Parks reached out to us and recognized that our day camp would be considered important in the governor's eyes because of the daycare that we provide. And out of the gate, we worked with Health and Human Services, Town of Rye, Public Health, to come up with a model that might work. Now, the other decision that we made that kind of made this possible was we've decided to keep the museum closed to the public for the entire summer, other than on weekends. So if the camp is in session, there's no chance of our campers interacting with the public. So we've maintained the sort of a security bubble there. That gives us, in terms of resources, a building of 15,000 square feet. That's the run of the kids, a 3,200 square foot function tent that we use with our outdoor focus on programs, and access to the park of 130 acres or so. So that's sort of the key that unlocked our ability to run our camps this summer. There's extensive health screening protocols in place. The health inspector has been by to observe how we operate, and we'll make other visits to make sure that we're keeping the safety of the kids in mind. I will say that the parents are incredibly thankful and grateful that we've been able to pull this together. The other thing that we did very early on in the process is because most of our registrations happen in January and February, we went quite full disclosure with our parents. We were able to give them a very detailed protocol very early on in the process, probably by the middle of April, so they could make decisions as to whether they felt it was going to be a safe environment for their kids. Understandably, some parents dropped out, and with that, other parents got the word, saw the guidelines, and chose to join us. So, as I said, it's a qualified success story. We've come up with a model based on our sort of spatial resources and the ability to redeploy staff. to make the camps work. On the other hand, the situation presents a real existential problem for the institution as a whole, because we've had to make concessions to museum visitation and school programming and other normal activities that will be off the table for the foreseeable future. But we're thrilled to be able to provide the camp resources to the community for this summer. And I want to thank you for all the work that you've done, especially advancing the CARES Act, because here's an instance where the PPP loan had a material difference in our ability to run camps. We were able to virtually train up all of our camp staff under the PPP a little earlier than we might have under normal circumstances, and that allowed us to maximize our forgiveness, get them trained up, and have them ready well in advance of camp. So some of it was just, paying attention to business circumstances that were created for us and being flexible enough to respond, and PPP made an enormous difference for us there. Of course, it's not going to help me out for the balance of the summer, but it sure did to get ready for camp. So we appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Jim. That's encouraging to hear. Hopefully we can get another round done here.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. And we'll now move to Bruce from the Currier Museum.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Senator Shaheen. It's wonderful to be online with all my colleagues. The Currier is in an unusual situation among this cohort in so much as we are an art museum. The educational department of the museum is fairly robust, and we run school tour programs throughout the year, and in our summer months we run day camps for campers that are largely from the surrounding region of Manchester. So I'll focus on our camps in particular in this segment. It's a day camp. It runs 5 days a week for 7 weeks of the summer. So our campers are with us for about 30 hours per week. So it's pretty sizable. About 10% of that population are from largely underserved populations in the city and surrounding areas. We have wonderful endowment that supports students and families of need. So we're a very diverse student body during the summers. And of course, we have the assets of the museum across the street. So the students are introduced to art making and art looking at our museum. Of course, what happened in March, like all of my colleagues, we had to work very quickly to think about how to manage this summer. We surveyed our 2,000 of our parent population and learned very quickly that parents would be very uncomfortable sending their children and teens and middle school students to live programming at the museum through the summer, and most of them said that they would entertain live in-person programs by mid-fall, given what they knew. So we very quickly moved our staff into learning what an online and virtual teaching experience could be. We trained on Zoom, and we moved all of our programs onto a Zoom platform and began to enroll students in late May. At this point, I can predict that we'll have around 200 students this summer taking classes on Zoom. Our typical summer is we typically have 500 students, so we're looking at about a 60% decrease in student population. What that means in terms of our revenue, we likely will see a revenue loss of about $70,000 for the summer. And that's, around 70%. These classes are not camps, so the tuition price is minimal compared to, a 6-hour experience at the Currier. We continue to use our scholarships, and we continue to extend out to families of need. But my concern there is that many of these families don't have the Wi-Fi capacity or technological capacity that they would need in order to have this online experience for their kids. So that's, in a nutshell, what we're seeing this summer. We do a fair bit of work, community work with social service organizations around our city, in our region. We work with the New American Center in downtown Manchester. We work with the VA, and we work with a number of organizations that serve adults with disabilities. And I'm happy to report that we've moved all of those programs onto an online platform for the summer. We've also, we do work with Easter Seals of New Hampshire with their senior division, largely working with adults with memory loss and related dementias. And we've also moved those programs onto an online experience. So that is sort of the silver lining in this, that our community of learners are, many of them have the ability and the willingness to learn through the virtual online component, and we continue to work that way. What does that mean for our future? At the Courier, I'm pretty certain that we will continue to do this online work. Each week we get better at it. But it doesn't obviously replace the live experience of camps and classes in person. But that is where we are. My hope is that come fall, we will start to phase in live in-person classes at the Art Center of the Courier. We have relatively smaller spaces there, so we will, respecting the guidelines, we will keep our classroom experiences tight. Our classroom attendance small, so that we can maintain the protocols from the guidelines of the state. Looking to next summer, I think we're going to continue to work in a kind of hybridized fashion where we have online and Zoom classes provided for the community. And I will close by saying that our school tour programs that typically serve 7,000 school-age students year-round, we're looking to move that experience to an online practice or modality in the fall as well, as we begin to learn what our schools are doing. The Courier is fortunate to have received PPP, the CARES Act funds in the first phase, and we are definitely interested and would fully support a second phase. We have also applied to the IMLS, the NEH, and the NEA for project funds that would support special programs and projects at the museum and in our educational realm. And we see these as very specific to our projects, but also as necessary budget relief for the institution as a whole. So I think I'll leave it at that. We so appreciate your support, Senator Shaheen, for all of our work at the museum, as well as your educational work in Washington. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Bruce. And I think that any package that we get done with another round of help is going to include help for households that don't have connectivity, for learning that can provide additional equipment, hotspots, the kinds of things that have been so important to ensuring that kids in all households can actually get online. So hopefully we'll get some more of that done in a way that will help the households that you're trying to reach that really need that access.
Thank you so much, Senator Shaheen.
Thanks, Bruce. We have two more speakers left, so we will move to Norm from the National Boys and Girls Club, Camp Mariposa.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everybody, and special thanks to Senator for supporting our youth in New Hampshire. We're all in this together, as we've heard many times. I was asked specifically to talk about our Camp Mariposa, but I'm so compelled to talk about so many other things, but in 2 or 3 minutes I won't be able to. But as far as Camp Mariposa, many may not know what it is, but it's an overnight camp that we've been running year-round for, this is our 6th year, actually. We run it through the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Nashua, and it's supported from folks at the Luna Foundation, along with donors in the state of New Hampshire. These kids that come to this camp every other month, it's an overnight camp, 2 nights, 3 days, are kids whose families are affected by substance abuse or suicide. These campers experience clinical therapy as well as traditional camp activities at our camp, and the camp is totally free and open for children ages 9 to 12. We also have a family engagement event to provide skills for the parents and the siblings and the households of these kids and these campers and their families to have a structured bonding time to share the resources. At the club, here at the Boys and Girls Club, we focus on mentoring throughout the year for these kids as well as other kids in other components of our activities. We also have a teen component of the Camp Mariposa, and those are for ages 13 through 16 years of age. And this has been developed separately as campus has aged out at the age of 12. We have a total of 65 kids. The dilemma was obviously what we've been talking about and what we're dealing with in this day and age. We conducted our bi-monthly camps at the Barbara Harris Conference Center in Greenfield, and now there's no overnight camps available. So we, as the words we've used many times, we've pivoted several times. Seems like on the hour we pivot to stay astride. But what we did was, on a positive note, we did a lot of virtual mentoring. We did Friday night virtual campfires where the kids would do letters of addiction and sing songs, all very, very, very challenging online. We still provided online drug prevention, self-esteem, resiliency programs, environmental nature type programs to make it fun with PowerPoints and Facebook and all of that just for these kids. We closed our doors March 13th. We still serviced about 150 kids, which was good. I kept 21 staff, FTs on staff to work remotely thanks to the PPP. Senator, we could have never done it without that PPP dollars. We're gratified for that. But, we've got, we're going to still run our Camp Mariposa throughout the summer, but it's going to be a whole different look. We've changed so many business models to stay astride, to be, to meet the needs of our kids, to make sure that they're still safe and they're healthy and it's affordable. We have 3 other entities as well that we're involved in here at the club, but our challenge is basically we're just like everyone else out there because of the isolation, because of the stay at home. Learning loss is critical. We need to focus on the academic success this summer, as well as we know that remote learning does have some losses in certain areas. The research has come out. Abuse and neglect is at a high, so we're focusing on that. And the mental health issues that come with all of this, especially with the kids that are at risk and the most vulnerable, and those kids that primarily we have coming to the Boys and Girls Club. Food insecurity is another big issue that we're facing, but we're able to, unfortunately, when it comes down to all of this, real quick, there's a lot of reduced services that we're going to provide for our children this summer and in the fall. That's where the challenges are, especially when we figure out what kind of school models our districts are going to choose. So that's our biggest demographics is the 8 to 18s, or 5 to 18s. And the kids are restricted to locations, set locations with staff. So we're losing a lot of the stimulus of providing these kids and the direct mentor contact as well. Our teens are participating, but it's very, very reduced. And our entire business model here in Nashua was a drop-in aspect. That's totally been removed. So when you look at a 50,000 square foot building, we had 450 average daily attendance. We reopened on June 1st as a ECCP program, 75 kids. We have a second phase opening next Monday. Our teen center is now at 50% capacity, which is a good thing. But our challenges in the summer will be changing our summer day camp, which we're going to have to close our Camp to Set typically it's 50 to 70 kids, ages 6 to 12. It's just not set up for COVID-19 safety regulations in the social distancing and the disinfectant and all of that. So we just don't have an adequate setup, and we don't feel that this is the year to open it up. So we're changing our clubhouse into a summer camp, and hopefully we'll be at 250 to 300 kids this summer at peak, and originally we're at 500. Real quick, I'll stop in 30 seconds. Our challenges are staffing. Our challenges are how can we increase with what resources for our operation in the evenings to provide electives for our kids, have some weekend programs to keep the kids off the streets, because we know, especially when it comes to the teens, there is a lack of socialization, the violence and the gangs and drug misuse is going to go on the rise. These kids do not have a safe place to go to. Transportation is one of our challenges. Our cleaning and disinfectant resources, as everybody has cost been going up. Cost per unit is going up. Justification of the cost per unit to our donors is an issue. Measuring our effectiveness, what's that going to look like? What are we going to be measuring? And revenue loss from our special events, from our rentals, and those areas there. So in closing, we're basically trying to focus on our kids' healthy lifestyles and mental wellness, and the challenges are in front of us. They've all been mentioned. I think the mentoring, that's the program that's out there, Senator. I believe it's called the Youth Need Mentors now more than ever for future funding. I think that'll be vital for keeping our young people safe and improving their academic success and helping increase our youth's resiliency. And I think there's a new support, Senate Bill 3747 on the Work Now Act, which I think is a great fit for our youth and our nonprofits as resources because of the demand of service and the support of nonprofits need at this point. Thank you, Senator, for all you do, and thank you for your interest. And sorry I went a little bit too long.
That's okay. Thanks, Norm.
Thank you, Norm. And then we have, last but not least, Larry Barker from the Barry Conservation 4-H Camp.
Hi, Senator Shaheen. I wanted to thank you for sharing. Thank you for asking, and thanks for listening. So I represent University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension and Barry Conservation 4-H Camp, which we operate jointly with New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, and we have canceled our 2020 season. You know, the financial ramifications aside, summer camps really represent an extremely important formative life experience for thousands and thousands of youth and young adults here in New Hampshire every year. And, you know, if there's every year that youth need camp and families need camp, this is it. So we've canceled. And the cancellation of camp represents just one more in a long string of COVID-related disappointments that we're handing youth. You know, there's a really important human side of this equation, and obviously there's lots to unpack there. But the bottom line is significant support is really needed to safeguard the future of summer youth camps. They are essential. Others have described the income gap for camps and seasonal businesses of about 18 months or so. But I think it's also important to point out that camps are still incurring significant 2020 costs. I got my pencil out, and for Barry Camp alone, it amounts to about 34% of our anticipated operating budget. We have pre-COVID startup expenses, which we've already incurred, and then we also have our fixed costs, which certainly won't go away. So it gets worse than just not having the income. We're still spending dollars. We're finding that, partly because we're a university program, we're really not eligible for most of the financial relief programs that have been offered thus far. And as you mentioned, because of the uniquenesses of camps as a business, most of the aid programs simply aren't meeting the needs of seasonal youth camps and seasonal businesses. So, yeah, we're facing some significant financial challenges for this year and beyond. And I want you to know that Barry Camp is just one UNH program. There have been 25 summer youth camps and programs at the university canceled this year, which is going to result in over 8,000 youth not being able to participate in in-person programming, as well as a loss of several hundred seasonal positions and over $2 million in revenue. So the impact is most definitely widespread, and it's definitely significant. I mean, think about the impact on families, and we talked about the childcare needs. So thank you for caring, for your efforts to help this community, and I know I join everyone else wishing you well and the best of luck passing this legislation.
Well, thanks very much, Larry. One of the things that was in the HEROES Act, as you're probably aware, is additional funding to help with colleges and universities, and I appreciate that it's not just the camp and cooperative extension that's being challenged here with financially, but it's also the university system, and that if we can't, not only do camps need help, but we got to provide some help for your underlying infrastructure. So again, I'm hopeful that we're going to be successful in also getting support for state and local governments, because that would help Fish and Game, for example, as they're trying to join with you in the program. So there is a lot to do, no doubt, and the information from all of you that you've been willing to share this morning really means a lot as I think about how to help make the arguments for why we've got to provide additional help. We can't lose whole sectors of our economy, and as so many of you have so eloquently put it, camps aren't just about providing care for children. They're a whole different experience that has an impact for so many kids on the rest of their lives. It's something they remember fondly and provide the kind of resilience that kids need as they grow and meet challenges throughout their lives. So thank you all so much for your continued efforts to try and make your camps work, to advocate on behalf of the camping sector in New Hampshire, and I will be doing everything I can along with my staff in Washington to try and ensure that you get additional help, and for those of you who are in such dire need because you've had to close, that we provide some assistance that can help you get through to next year and continue your operation, because it would be a huge loss to New Hampshire to lose this sector of our economy. And if you have any other thoughts as we are moving forward and trying to negotiate some additional help in Washington, if you have any ideas, feel free to reach out to Peter, to Madison, to us, and to Robert, Ariel, the staff in Washington as well, and let us know what you're thinking. And we will call on you as we're looking for additional information to try and make the case. Again, thanks for taking the time this morning, and we will do everything we can to support you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.